Regular meeting of the Joint Planning and Zoning Committee and the special called Committee of the Whole. It is Wednesday, March 8th, roughly 3:30 p.m. You can't see the clock back there anyway. So we are hereby called to order. Do we have a motion on the minutes from our last meeting?
Yes, I move approval of the January minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the meeting minutes of our last meeting have been approved. We have one rezoning case today, ZAC 2022-00013. Yes, are you going to read our case?
So our case is ZAC 2022-13 in the Highland Park neighborhood. It's an application to change zone district boundaries from QO&I, Qualified Office and Institutional District, to MUM, Mixed Use Medium District, to allow for the use of a restaurant. It's been filed by Miller Mobley, the owner, and it's located at 2614 Highland Avenue. The applicant plans to open a restaurant that will be called George's. The subject property sits on 0.28 of an acre of land, currently zoned QO&I, Qualified Office and Institutional District, and abutting the subject property to the north, east, and west are parcels that are zoned R7 Multiple Family District. To the south of the property is also zoned O&I, Office and Institutional District, and this property is located within the Highland Park Overlay District. In 2011, the property was rezoned from R7 Multiple Dwelling District to QO&I Qualified Office and Institutional District, and those Q conditions queued out everything except for an office type use. The applicant would like to rezone to open George's, a restaurant. George's will be a full-service restaurant operating 7 nights a week from 5 to 10 p.m. There will be an estimated 25 employees on a nightly basis, and the restaurant may have up to 100 guests dining at any given time. George's will utilize a valet service for parking. The city's long-range land use plan identifies the property as MUM, Mixed Use Medium. Because the site is located 268 feet from a BJCTA bus stop, it qualifies for a 20% reduction in the overall parking requirement, and the applicant plans to install bike racks that will qualify for an additional 10% reduction. So this takes his parking requirement from 50 spaces down to 35 parking spaces. The site is still 31 parking spaces short of the requirement for the use, so the applicant plans to utilize a valet service and will be leasing 60 spaces from the TIAA building and is aware that they will require a parking modification from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. The city's landscape architect does not have any concerns with the conceptual landscaping plan that has been provided, and the property is located within the Highland Park Historic District, so all landscaping, signage, and exterior building improvements will require approval from the city's Design Review Committee, and the applicant is aware of this. As it stands with stormwater, the plan appears to increase the impervious area of the site by adding an outdoor patio area and modifying the entrance to the building. Even though it's not a large area, the applicant will need to install pervious pavers for this area. The Department of Transportation has reviewed the rezoning request and does not have any immediate concerns regarding traffic circulation, ingress, egress, or right-of-way improvement for the proposal. A more detailed review will be required for permit approval or for any changes to the conceptual plan. And this property is located within the Southern Framework Plan area, and this framework plan has not been adopted and an implementation committee has not been formed. The Highland Park Neighborhood Association met at its regularly scheduled meeting on January 10th, 2023 to review the proposed project and voted to support the proposed rezoning request. The neighborhood supports the request because they feel that the valet parking plan and the incentives to encourage ride sharing for their staff and guests will help with parking concerns. They hope this will help bring activity back to this site in a way that will benefit and improve the neighborhood, not impose it. The applicant changed their request from seeking C2 general commercial to seeking MUM mixed use medium to better align with the city's long range land use plan. And because of this, the rezoning request was heard again at the Highland Park Neighborhood Association's regularly scheduled meeting on February 14th, 2023. The neighborhood voted unanimously to approve the request with the queue conditions. And number 1 just queues out everything but a restaurant. And number 2 is any modifications to the submitted site development plan should be reviewed by the Zoning Advisory Committee. The Zoning Advisory Committee met at its regularly scheduled meeting on March 7th, 2023 to review the rezoning request and voted unanimously to recommend the request to the Planning and Zoning Committee with the following queue conditions. And number 1 queues out anything but a restaurant. And number 2 is any modifications to the submitted site development plan should be reviewed by the Zoning Advisory Committee. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here? Please come forward and state your name and address and show us what you're planning on doing.
My name is Miller Mobley, and my address is 2130 Highland Avenue. Would you like a presentation, both of y'all?
Beg your pardon?
Would you like a presentation?
Well, yes.
Okay, great.
That's why we're here.
So, the name of this proposed restaurant is George's. And just a little background about that choice. There was a mayor, Mayor George Ward, who was the 16th mayor of Birmingham, and he proposed a beautification effort, keep Birmingham beautiful, make Birmingham beautiful, and he actually saved those 3 ravines in Highland Park, which became parks. And so it's just kind of a nod to him and his efforts to keep Birmingham beautiful. George's, the restaurant that I'm envisioning, and I think about background and place and environment, and how Highland Park is just such this beautiful, nostalgic, almost European neighborhood with lots of walkability. And I think about that setting and how I'd want to place this restaurant there. And it just exudes the character that I'm looking for. And I think about setting and place a lot. And so George's is kind of a nostalgic restaurant that kind of hints back at the Gilded Age of dining. And so what I'm kind of thinking is it's oysters and steak and martinis and just kind of that old school comfort food done at an elevated level. Obviously, you can see why I chose this neighborhood. It's just a beautiful backdrop for this restaurant. And the building that sits there today is vacant. It's been vacant for, according to some people, over a decade. And I really want to turn it into a beautiful architectural gem. And so if you turn to page 6, you'll kind of see a rendering of what I envision the facade of the restaurant looking like. And then you can flip to see kind of the interior design. And there's not a lot of windows in this restaurant, so we really control the atmosphere and the lighting. And, it kind of feels like a movie set. It's part theatrical and part culinary at the same time. And then there's some more pages of interior design and kind of fashion and, artwork that will be in the restaurant. And then we kind of go over a menu, some pictures to kind of illustrate what that cuisine will look like. Then there's a little bit about me and my partner. I'm a filmmaker and photographer in background. So I like restaurants to kind of have that cinematic experience. Then there's the architectural renderings of the facade. There's a floor plan as well. We are aiming to have around 100 seats in the restaurant. And then I can kind of talk about our parking and valet operations. So the way I'm envisioning this is that when you arrive to the restaurant, you pull in traditionally how you would pull in currently to the building. And because of the length of that parking lot, there's probably enough space, what we've estimated is 6 cars to kind of stack right there. And you would valet. The valet's free. And you would walk into the restaurant, and the valet would take your car down that alleyway, back out to Nizuma, and they would park it at the TIA building, which we have 60 traditional parking spaces. Most valets use a grid system, so you could probably fit 80 cars. And then we've introduced, we kind of feel like the system of valet is broken as it is. You know, it's all paper, and you come out and you hand your paper and you have to wait for your car, and it could be raining. So what we're doing is building in some technology to the restaurant that you're able to call your car from your table when you're ready to leave. And so the valet will go fetch the car and bring it down Nizuma, then come up, I believe it's, help me about the street, 11th. And then they would pull back down to Highland, and your car, there's a curb cut that would happen, and car would sit there, and you would get back in your car and be on your way. We have a long-term lease on the 60 spaces. We also have a first right of refusal to buy the building itself and the parking. And the lease is negotiated with a business partner of ours. So it's not just a floating out lease that could, it's in the interest that we work together on this. And I've kind of highlighted the valet operations on page 17 and 18, and you can kind of see the arrival flow. I tried to do my best here with the graphics. And then on 18, you can see the departure flow.
Bless you.
And that's kind of the high level.
So, say again where the valet, when you ask for your car to be brought to you, where is
you will see this curb cut. And so the whole point of that is taking the car off the street so that we don't, because it's a one lane, we don't back up any traffic.
How do you tell where your curb cut is? I don't even see a street on here.
The street would just be in front of the curb.
Okay, down at the bottom.
Yes, ma'am.
So, where's the street?
Do
you have a street on there?
If you look on page 7 of the staff report on the survey,
Okay.
Highland Avenue is down at the bottom, and then what he's talking about, you see the existing driveway on the right side of the property, and they are going to be adding in a pull out there off Highland Avenue, and that's where they're going to queue them up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yours has a street. I mean, it shows where the street is. That's nice. Okay, so when people get their cars, they don't have to go back down the alley again.
Correct.
They just zoom down.
Yeah, we're trying to not put as much pressure on that alleyway. I mean, I just don't think it's a great customer experience for you to have to go down a dark alleyway when you leave a restaurant. I think your car should be brought to the front of the restaurant, and you go off from there, and you're right on Highland.
Well, not only that, all that traffic in that alley is right behind people's homes.
That's right.
So
we
yeah,
cut that in half.
okay. So, Mr. Woods, do you have any questions?
I do. I kind of looked at this, and so I don't know if you're going to hear from other speakers first.
Well, I thought if there was anything like the immediate that grabbed you, like I was trying to figure out the parking.
Yeah, my
valet.
only question that I pulled out was just kind of what a lot of this parking calculation being done based on leasing spaces. What actually happens in the event that the lease goes away in the future for whatever reason? How does that play out in real world?
If the lease were to go away, then that would mean that his parking goes away. When they go to ZBA for the parking modification, they do have the option to record their parking agreement, and that is a legal document that does come up with a title search, and that is in perpetuity. So that would protect these 60 spaces.
For the term of the lease.
For like in perpetuity, so yes, they would always be there. Is that what you were asking? If the parking spaces went away?
I guess if they lose access to those 60 spaces for any reason in the future.
Yeah, so a recorded parking agreement would give them access to the 60 spaces in perpetuity. To like get rid of that agreement, they'd have to return back to ZBA and undo it.
So we would be protected, is what you're saying?
Yes. It's a legally binding document that our Office of the City Attorney reviews and everything like that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's only going to be protected for the term of the lease, which is probably not perpetuity.
If they terminate the lease?
If this expires.
No, the parking agreement is in perpetuity. So obviously the building would have to agree to enter into it as well.
I got you.
But it's in perpetuity.
And the building owner is a business partner of ours, so it's in his interest to agree.
Okay, so now if you'll take a seat on the front row, then we're going to listen to members of the public or anyone else who wants to speak, if it's positive, negative, or whatever. So are there any people in the audience who wish to speak regarding this case? Yes, sir. Please give your name and address.
Yes, my name is Pat Byington. My address is 2617 11th Avenue South. You were talking about the alley. My house is adjacent to the alley, so on 11th Avenue. So when he talks about going up 11th Avenue too. So I do have some written comments here. I am asking the council to delay the applicant's rezoning until 3 major issues are resolved: traffic, public safety, and parking. According to the staff report, the Transportation Department did not have any issues with the applicant's proposal. I strongly disagree. There are numerous potential problems that I hope can be addressed for the benefit of the neighborhood. Let's start with traffic. To access, and if y'all have a chance to look at the map and everything, to access the new restaurant from the west, customers will need to make an illegal U-turn on Highland Avenue. Let's make that clear. They have to make an illegal U-turn. If motorists obey the rules, they will have to travel around all the way around Rhodes Park to turn their car around in the right direction to access the valet's parking. To be honest, I don't foresee people doing that. It should concern the Department of Transportation safety-wise. You have people breaking the law. And the new restaurant will be encouraging an illegal U-turn. Second, if a customer is coming from the west, traveling east on Highland Avenue, does not want to do an illegal U-turn, they can turn on 27th Street right there. That is the narrow street that leads you into the, with the Claridge and Hanover Court right there. And it leads you right over to Hanover Circle. Now, that is likely going to happen. And when people take that turn, they're going to go, what do? I guess I need to go around Hanover Circle. Because you can't go left. You can't, I guess you could go right, and that might be another thing, but they'll be there at Hanover Circle. If they continue on to Hanover Circle, they'll have a choice. They can go around the entire Hanover Circle, or they can get right at the edge of the Hanover Circle Park, the park there, and then it's a one-way street, but a lot of people do this. I've seen it happen. They'll take a left, another illegal turn, a left to go by on the one-way street, and you can do it, but it'll be a left to get on where Anne's, St. Anne's places. You have to take that left, and then you'll get back around. But I assume, and I will almost guarantee this will happen, because if you don't want to do valet parking, you might want to park on Hanover Circle. I mean, that would be, it'd be a nice little walk from there to the restaurant. I want to remind the council that about a decade ago, we closed Hanover Circle at St. Vincent's to pedestrian and motorized traffic to prevent people other than the residents of Hanover Circle from parking there. I fear the new restaurant will put us back to square one. Let's talk about safety. The applicant plans to send dozens of cars down the alley behind their establishment. Again, the traffic department has nothing to say about this in the staff's zoning advisory committee report. Nothing to say about this. When you look at your map, it looks flat, doesn't it? If you look at the map, it looks flat. It's not. First of all, I have used this alley for 32 years as a resident. That's how long I've lived in my house. It is narrow between the Claridge and Hanover Court and the applicant's property. After my garage, which is right next to the Claridge, you begin to have a very steep incline down the street, the alley. And then it ends, after you have 2600 and you have all their exits, people leaving onto the alley. It's very steep, and then right at 26th Street, which is 26 or Nyazuma, as we can call it, everybody calls it a couple of things. You're right there, right in front of you is Virginia Sanford Theater. It's right at the entrance of Virginia Sanford Theater. Between 4:30 and 6 o'clock every working day, traffic regularly backs up at the intersection of Highland Avenue, Nyazuma, and Caldwell Park. And it doesn't just back up, it backs up many times all the way to St. Vincent's and the Nick. And on the other side, it also backs up all the way to Freddy's sometimes, if you're traveling east. So, if you're a valet driver, let me guarantee you this: you will not be able to turn left to travel efficiently to the parking lot from the alley. And not only that, it's a dangerous left-hand turn. People are coming down, roaring down Nyazuma, and they come down in a steep incline, incline again, and here you are trying to make a turn left. Not only that, when you're at that right there, on your right, there is cars parked, which block your view, especially if you're unfamiliar. looking toward its Episcopal Place, looking toward down north, I guess that is, and your view's blocked. I mean, this is a hard intersection for me that has to take it every day to hop onto Nyazuma right there. And then, of course, then you have to get to the light and move up. But let's just say they make it over to the parking area up on Nyazuma. Did the traffic department consider the safety of the valet drivers who must drop off their cars and then rush back, and this isn't easy, rush back to the restaurant down that steep hill? And I do hope you get to see it. I know you know it, but I do hope you get to see it. It's a steep hill crossing a busy intersection to pick up additional cars. Again, I guarantee you the valet drivers will be jaywalking and jumping the median regularly to get there. Because if they don't, we are going to have cars lining up. Once again, they're breaking the law. We're setting up we have illegal U-turn. People are going to be doing illegal U-turns, and then we have people. I hope the valet guys don't break the law, but I know they're going to go to get there. They have to. With all this said, we haven't even mentioned what the conditions will be the nights there are plays at Virginia Sanford Theater. Presently on my street, 11th Avenue, there is no parking on both sides of the street when there's a play, especially a popular one, with parked cars lined both sides of the street. If two cars start coming down, and now you're going to have more with their valet folks coming up, with two cars coming down, there is little, if no, in some cases, no room to move aside and let the other car through. It's going to be a problem. It already is a problem. All this is already a problem. Again, and I'm just telling you that's according to the applicant's plans. That's the route. But again, the traffic department, and I think this is the key, in your report, they say nothing. They don't see a problem, according to their report. And I think that's a big problem. I think we need to study this and then figure out how to fix it before we change the zoning. Last, parking. And I know I have some friends who are going to talk about this more too. We know historic apartments like Hanover Circle have never been afforded parking. They have had to resort to parking illegally even on the applicant's own property. Today, the restaurant's not even open and they have no place to park. They're resorting to park on the applicant's property. It's a problem. We have serious parking problem today, and nothing is done, or nothing is going to help us if we plop down a restaurant in the middle of this problem. The plight of the Hanover court folks is only going to worsen. So we need the Department of Transportation to step up and study the situation and come up with solutions to these current and potential problems. The lack of a report by the department is a disservice. And I've got to tell you, it's a disservice to the applicant. And if not done, it will harm the neighborhood as a whole. One last comment, and I do appreciate the time here. I've lived on this street in this area for 30 years. We've had 3 restaurants on that street on the Highland Avenue behind us. Not where they are right they're proposing, but we've had 3. 2 of those, we've had 3 restaurants that have failed right there. We know the owners of 2 of them, and they said one of the problems they had was traffic. and parking. I don't want this applicant to fail. Bottom line, so the city needs to step up and help resolve these problems for the entire community. I'll make one last comment, and that is there's an old saying called public good before private advantage. We need to look out for the public good. And in fact, George Ward, that is actually, and I brought his book today from the Historical Society, and he talks about public good. That is what made him a special person and a special mayor, and someone worthy of having a restaurant named after him. Let's live by his words. Public good.
Thank you, Mr. Byington. Are there any other speakers?
Councilman Abbott, I'm Eddie Johnson. I'm a resident of Hanover Court. I submitted something a couple weeks ago, and Ms. Blankenship, did you provide that to the...
Yes, I did. I did provide them your letter.
Okay. And Councilman Abbott, I don't know if you've got this in front of you. If you don't, I'm happy to bring you my copy.
We have it in our report here.
Okay, great. As I said, I'm a resident of Hanover Court. I've been a resident there 10 years. I've lived in Highland Park for approximately almost 25 years. And I'd just like to really echo a few of the things that Pat said without hopefully beating a dead horse. He's right about the residents in our building. Having lived there probably longer than just about everybody in the building, I've seen what's happened over the last 10 years. And it was, 10 years ago, it was very easy to just find a parking place either directly in front of the building or on 27th Street. There was always something open, or even a little bit further down Highland Avenue. That's not happening anymore. I never see anything open at any time of day when I'm there, particularly after work. So we began, just with a lack of any other place to go, we began parking on the subject property before Mr. Mobley purchased it. And I'd say that started about 4 years ago, just a little bit before the pandemic. One car, then two, then three, and now regularly, and I see it every day because I continue to park. I trespass on his property, and I admit it. But routinely every night there are between 7 and 9 vehicles parked in there every night. And the simple reason is because they have no other place to go. And I don't know what's going on. I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know if there's more people living in the area or what, but I do see what's going on. Now, I submitted this letter with the approval of several of the other residents at Hanover Court, because we all are experiencing the exact same problem. To highlight a little of what Pat said too, you know, I look at the parking issue as another traffic and public safety matter. To just give you one example of a public safety problem created by parking is the Virginia Sanford Theater Days, because we do see a lot more people, in some cases parked where there is a no parking zone in that area, and the reason it's no parking zone is simply because it's dangerous to park there, it's dangerous to pedestrians, and it's dangerous to cars. And that's another reason why I think that the city, or that this public safety issue and traffic issue just needs to be done to pump the brakes on this proposal. I want to see this guy succeed. I'm excited about there being a restaurant right next door to my place. It's a good restaurant. I'm just really concerned about what appears to be a headlong rush into let's get this done, and particularly with no analysis, no study or anything by the Department of Transportation. That was another thing I'd heard, is that and I don't know who it was, but somebody with the DOT had, spoken about the aspirations of this area being a walking community. We want to encourage public transportation, and we want to encourage non-motorized vehicles, which sounds great, but the reality is much different than that. And it also sounds to me like, on one hand, here we are with this aspirational idea of let's reduce the number of cars, while at the same time, this is what we're doing. We're adding cars to the whole situation. It sounds to me like we don't really understand what the mission is here for the department. I mean, I don't think that the department necessarily knows the mission. That's what's concerning. That's why I would hope that the council and the committee would pump the brakes on this, and let's just delay this while we have an opportunity and while the city has an opportunity to take a look at what they're potentially getting themselves into and what they're getting the residents into. I think that's about everything that I had, and you did say you had this, correct?
This is the one that at the requesting parties wanted a meeting to be...
It's entitled Neighbors Request for Cancellation.
Cancellation
That's it.
of the hearing.
Okay, you've got it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we have it. And it's highlighted in yellow.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
any other speakers?
Hey, my name's Sydney Blankenship. I live in the same building as Mr. Johnson at 2620 Highland Avenue South. I am a resident physician at UAB, and with that comes long hours and oftentimes getting home after 5 o'clock. My concern with the proposal is that coming home on days that the restaurant is operating, which is 7 days a week, there's not going to be anywhere to park if I get home after 5. My concern, again, is just like most of you, I'm sure, whenever I go to a restaurant, even if there's valet parking, if there's street parking available, that's going to be my first go-to. And considering, as was mentioned before, our building does not have any parking whatsoever besides street parking, my concern is that all of that's going to be taken, and I'm either going to have to valet my own car to go home after work, or going to have to park several blocks away just to come home after a long day. So my proposal, if all of this were to pass, again, is just consideration for the people that live next door, but also to consider some sort of permitted parking for those of us that are completely reliant on street parking, just so that way we don't have to fight against all of the restaurant consumers just to find a place to park to go home. I know that, that gets into other things such as enforcement and that type of thing and figuring out a lease, and I know that all of that is something else we'd have to look into. I just wanted to bring it to think about before we go ahead with all of this. And, even if it's no more than just a sign and relying on people that live there to enforce it instead of police force, I think that that's, just common consideration to those of us that live right next door to the building and we'll have to deal with this every day.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Blankenship. Anyone else who would like to speak? I'm kind of stunned that the Department of Transportation had no comments on this too. This seems like a hot mess because I'm familiar with the area and these people on the front row who live in the neighborhood are familiar with it, but clearly people who aren't familiar with it have remained unfamiliar with it. Unfortunately, everything they said is true. This is a very congested, dangerous part of town, partly because of the theater, partly because the structures were built before cars. And so very few people have a place to put a car because cars hadn't been invented yet. And we had a transit system back then. Of course, it was drawn by a mule, but we had one. So, I am really concerned about the parking issue is the biggest issue. The restaurant looks fabulous. I mean, it made me hungry to look at the pictures. But the parking around that area is pretty much a disaster now, especially if there is a theater production, because I attended a theater production recently, and Mr. Byington, I believe I parked in front of your house. And I felt bad about it, but there was nowhere else to go. So, and that was with a block walk to get back to the theater. So, on Birmingham sidewalks, which is another issue we won't talk about. So, I'm concerned, is there a way we can hear from the Department of Transportation as to why they have no report?
Well, yeah, Councilor Abbott, Colin Alexander is here with the Birmingham Department of Transportation to address those questions.
I'd really like to hear an explanation.
I'm Colin Alexander. I serve as Senior Planner with the Birmingham Department of Transportation. To begin with, I will say it's not that the department did not study this issue. It's that the department, and these are studied by engineers, which I'm not an engineer, but I trust our engineering team, looked at this in great detail and determined that they were not concerned about the traffic impacts, mainly because we are comfortable with the valet plan. We believe people will use the valet parking. We believe that will accommodate the parking. The parking actually exceeds his parking requirement. The parking agreement with the 60 spots actually doubles what his parking requirement is currently. So we are comfortable with that system.
Have you driven on 26th Street at rush hour?
Yes,
so
I have.
How do you think this is safe?
So, Jess, can you remind us of the hours of operation?
Yes, the hours of operation are going to be Monday through Sunday, 5 to 10 p.m.
5 to 10 p.m. So there may be a little bit of congestion to start at the early part of the restaurant hours. However, as we know, rush hour by about 6 o'clock should dissipate to the point where we feel comfortable with the valet plan to navigate through 26th Street / Niazuma. Having grown up in the neighborhood, I'm very familiar with the situation. There's a mention about parking, residential parking permitting. We are, as a department and as a city, we're studying a broad range of parking issues. Residential parking permitting is one of the things that we are studying. There are a lot of issues to implementation. Enforcement is one of the big ones. It doesn't make sense to charge residents for a permit when you can't enforce it. That's going to require some negotiation with state law and legislation. It's going to be a complicated process. But that's still something we, in our long-term vision for parking, see that as a component. I cannot tell you a timeline at this point for that, as we're studying that.
So you're telling me that the residential parking permitting proposal that we haven't seen yet is going to require approval by the legislature?
Not necessarily. So from what I understand, and I actually did the original study on it that was presented to the neighborhood back in 2019, there are some issues in terms of how we can enforce that, in terms of towing in particular, I believe. I would need to come back and get that clarified from the staff that's actually handling that research now. It's no longer in my court. But there are some issues there that we have to address, and then there's just figuring out how that system would work. That is on our agenda, but we're not ready to implement yet.
So you don't have any way of stopping anyone who wants to go to the restaurant and park in front of someone's home?
Correct.
I mean, there's no control over that, so if they don't want to get involved with the valet parking, even though it's free, and I commend you for that, but so y'all are okay with contributing to the mess that's already over there?
We just believe that the valet parking system will handle the parking concern based off of our engineers' studies.
Okay. So how many traffic engineers are there in your department?
I'd have to go back and find the actual number.
Are they actual traffic engineers?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's good. Okay, Councilor Woods, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was just interested in the conversation that took place at the neighborhood meeting. I think the request was to kind of delay this so there could be some further conversation at the neighborhood meeting, but I guess it's come up twice at this point, and was just interested as to maybe what conversation has taken place already, and what that conversation was. I mean, did y'all have an opportunity? I guess I would ask.
The neighborhood association did not request to delay this. They voted to support it.
No, I'm referencing the letter, Mr. Johnson.
Oh, yes. He sent that to staff, but staff doesn't have the authority to cancel ZAC.
No, I'm saying he asked for it to be delayed, and I was asking about either the January or February meeting. Did you have an opportunity to speak there, and what was that conversation?
Yeah, I wasn't at that meeting. I know Pat was, so maybe he needs to talk.
Come to the microphone to speak so we can hear you. Yes, I was in attendance at both of the meetings where they discussed this, and but Mr. Byington is an actual resident.
Yeah, well, I wasn't. My wife was at the one in February, and we both were on the Zoom call in January. And the reason it was delayed was, and the applicant can also answer this, is that their first, the zoning was it C2? They had an incorrect zoning that we voted on, which was C2.
No, I guess my question is more around...
And we had to change it in February.
My question is more around basically the concerns that y'all have raised today in these letters. Did you raise those at the neighborhood meeting, and kind of what was that conversation like?
They were raised, but let me make this clear. In January, we get a Zoom call, and you're seeing maps and stuff and a whole presentation, and that's the first time you see the project. Now, you can say, well, you should have seen the project beforehand, but that was the first time we'd heard. It's the first time we'd heard, about the valet plan, and so, and I may add, at that meeting, the head of transportation, James Fowler, was there, and he was answering questions. But I personally, and you can look at the minutes, and I'll be glad to send you the video, he was advocating for the project. And he didn't vote, and he did recuse himself from the vote. But I got to tell you, when you have the head of transportation advocating for a project, that turns the tide of a neighborhood.
Yes, I was surprised at that. But he's a resident of the neighborhood.
He is a resident and very genuine. And he did say he was recusing himself from the vote, which I believe he did. But as someone who wanted to, I don't know if that, I can't read the minds of the 35 plus people who voted for it. So,
yeah, so I guess my thought is, with the request, I guess, from some particular residents being to, I guess, delay this hearing or cancel this hearing versus voted no. Like, I guess I'm wondering what additional conversation around this topic.
Let me tell you something positive we've done. We put the parking issue, we've asked for the parking issue in general to be put, and it is, on the February 14th agenda, March 14th agenda. In front of the neighborhood association, because of all this, we have asked for that to be on the agenda, to have a discussion with the neighborhood to say, hey, there's a problem. This is help. So we are trying to get the neighborhood to understand there is a genuine problem for the residents of Hanover Court and around that area.
Yeah, and having attended the meeting, the thing that I noticed was that the people who thought it was a great idea didn't live anywhere near it. And the people who lived near it were all opposed to it. But there were not very many people there who lived near it. I think there were only you and maybe one other person who lived nearby that was at that neighborhood.
Well, and I would love to see some public notice reform, okay? Because my in-laws live on 2600. 2600, so just so you know, that's within the distance. It's literally adjacent, okay? And I got a notice, but they own a condo at 2600, and they didn't get notice, and none of their folks got notice who own condos in 2600. Now, what I've been told is that the notice is sent to, I guess, the property person at 2600, and you're depending on that person to tell the 40 residents on 2600, to tell them that there's a public neighborhood meeting concerning the property next door. It didn't happen, and it didn't happen with Hanover Court either. They didn't know. So literally the two adjacent properties within the area didn't get the notice. I don't know if the Claridge did. I mean, you're talking about 40 residents. Y'all have got 12. Claridge has, I think, about 60 or 70. But y'all did it right. You did it correct. But there needs to be some kind of reform on that because...
Okay, so if you own a condo, you don't get a notice sent to you. It just goes to an association?
If you own a condo, for public notices, we pull all of our information from the Jefferson County Tax Assessor's website. And for condos, they do not list each individual condo owner. It goes to the condo association. And it's then the condo association's responsibility to notify the owners. So we have no way to notify condo owners. We don't know who they are.
Wow. Well, I've never lived in a condo, so I guess I learn something new every day. So, Councilor Woods?
I actually agree with that statement. I think we do need to look at, I guess we can call it reform of that system, but because it is very hard to show a neighborhood something in the meeting and want them to vote on it in the same meeting. And so I do appreciate zoning for just kind of letting us know when they see things come across, because this early as possible we can show the neighborhood something, because it's just unrealistic to see a 15-minute presentation and then try to make a decision on it just because people aren't wired to, even if it's a change that they might eventually be interested in, to be interested in it immediately. So we do need to think about what that looks like and how to, whether it's you can't vote at the same you have to present it once and then you can vote the next meeting or something along those lines. But that's a sidebar. But like I said, I kind of do find it hard to tell somebody also that their property is undevelopable because somebody else doesn't have enough parking, and so that is a hurdle in my mind. Like because you're basically saying what you're saying is the property is not developable unless it needs 4 parking spaces or less, and they do actually have a parking plan, which I guess sounds like some of the existing things don't have a parking plan for some valid reasons, but so you got that. So I don't know how much more conversation there is, but I'm open to sending this to council, but making it March 21st or March 28th, so that feedback from the March 14th meeting can be included in consideration at the full council meeting. But that is a thought, and I won't put that in motion form until we wrap up whatever conversation is left to be had.
Okay, is this coming to the council on March 14th?
No, they want to. There's a neighborhood meeting on March 14th, and that will give them the opportunity to have some more conversation. We could send it to council on the 21st or the 28th, and the feedback from that next meeting could be incorporated prior to the council taking this item up, full council. But
Are you asking for it to also come back to planning and zoning?
No.
Okay, then in that case, they could go to the March 14th meeting because we have to advertise for 4 weeks anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so what meeting is this supposed to hit the council? Our meetings. Do y'all have a
If
projected?
we were to submit it next Wednesday, it should hit council April 11th.
Okay.
Oh.
So we need to make a decision. We need to vote it up, down, make suggestions, or send it to the council with no recommendation. I mean, we need to make a decision about what we're going to do. I'm uncomfortable. I'm very uncomfortable with the issue of parking because I know the area and I'm over there all the time and I see what happens. And so I'm uncomfortable about the parking situation because although the applicant has got some parking, I don't know if anybody's going to use it, and I'm not sure I feel that great about the safety of the poor people that are going to be trying to take the cars to it, especially, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They may never get out of the alley, so they may just have to stay there. But this building only has, 6 parking spaces of its own?
Yes, it currently has 6, so anything that wants to use this site is going to need a parking modification.
Yeah, unless it's a doctor's office again or something like that.
Yes.
I think that's what it was, wasn't it?
That is what it was, because it was rezoned in 2011, and the current queue conditions only allow it to be like a real estate doctor office.
Someplace where nobody ever comes.
Yes.
Or not many. Anyway, so
Did we ask them to change this?
I think your suggestion that we definitely send it back to the neighborhood for further discussion about the parking issues, especially since the residents over here have already asked them to, didn't y'all say that you've already asked the neighborhood association to talk about parking issues in the neighborhood in general?
Yes, it's on the agenda for this next
For
meeting.
this next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't really need to.
Now, I'll clarify, like I said, I wasn't saying to send this back to the neighborhood. My thing is I would like them to have the opportunity to have an additional conversation prior to the council voting on it, so that feedback could be provided to councilors ahead of a vote, which sounds like with the April 11th date being the fastest possibility will allow for that to happen.
Okay. Yes, sir. Did you want to speak again, please?
Can our team have some chance to make some remarks?
Yeah, please.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Clark Bailey, and I work for Kimley Horn and Associates, located at 2 North 20th Street. We are a civil engineer working for Mr. Mobley on this project. Personally, I am a professional traffic operations engineer, so we do have one in the room, and I thought it pertinent to bring some quantitative numbers to the table. There's been a lot of discussion, as there often is, surrounding traffic and parking about that is very qualitative of things are bad, things are congested, and lots going to add much more in this sense. I think it's important for us to understand total numbers to be produced. The restaurants plan to have at maximum capacity 100 guests to be supported at maximum by 25 employees. One thing that was mentioned in the staff report for the employees, but really not brought up, is Mr. Mobley will be subsidizing employees either using rideshare, transit, or bike to commute to and from work. So he will reimburse or help pay for that cost for them in order to reduce the dependency on parking. Additionally, restaurants tend to have higher occupancy per vehicle for guests, and then maximum capacity being at 100 guests. Traditionally, we don't see a 5 p.m. dinner filling up instantly. And so if we take that conservative number of, let's say, the 60 parking spots that is available for the restaurant and they have secured, and if the restaurant opens at 5 p.m., we can anticipate those 60 vehicles bringing 100 guests over that hour to the restaurant. On average, that would add one car to the roadways per minute, which is a very small number of vehicles compared to the already identified large number of vehicles on the roads. On a street like Highland Avenue, during the peak hours, I don't have a specific traffic count, but that typically represents hundreds to the thousand of cars per hour in each direction. So you can see by adding, let's take the low number of, if we have 400 cars in each direction on Highland Avenue, we would have 460. And so it would, and that's if everybody used the exact same route and spread over an hour's time. This would continue. There's also an argument for the parking. I have not done a complete parking occupancy study in the area. That is typically something that is required as part of a parking variation with ZBA. And so, I mean, that is, I think, in the process through the city, that's typically where we determine if parking requirements are met and if the alternative it meets that need. But anecdotally, driving around the neighborhood at around the 7 p.m. hour, I do see open parking spots, but those are not along, I believe that's 27th Street South, directly adjacent to the condos there. But I have seen a number of available spaces in the evening hours available around. If those do fill up, the patrons at the restaurant have the easiest option. I mean, drivers follow the path of least resistance. We know that, and we see that commonly. And their path of least resistance is their free valet that's available. They won't have to deal with the traffic. With the lack of parking. And so maybe speaking a little bit for Mr. Mobley here, my request would be that his development has produced an acceptable plan to handle the load of parking vehicles that it will be attracting to the neighborhood. And the load of vehicles impacting the traffic would be small enough in a sense that would not further exacerbate existing issues there.
Okay, and can you repeat that part you said about you're expecting 60 vehicles with 100 seats, and you would be, I wrote down moving one car per minute. I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying there is if we have 100 guests attend the restaurant, if it opens at 5 p.m., it may take an hour for all 100 guests to show up. 100 guests would, at a conservative estimate, would come in 60 different vehicles. It most likely would be much less than that because people mostly go to restaurants with other people. So those 60 cars coming to the restaurant over that 1 hour period, if you average them out over that hour, that averages out to one car per minute. 60 cars, 60 minutes. Now we can expect that there may be 5 1 minute, there may be 0 another minute. Mr. Mobley has, I believe, we can store 6 to 8 cars for valets operations at a time.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Sometimes I write things down and then I wonder later. Councilor Woods, do you have any questions?
Nothing else. I mean, I think we've kind of got an understanding of what the sides are and what the concerns are at this point. So I just think they probably need to talk, see if either side moves any closer to the other but at least have that conversation prior to the council as a whole voting on it. So,
Okay, do you have a motion? Wait, we have a Mr. Gambrell.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that upon advice of council, when we look at these Q conditions, especially Q condition 2, that says any modification to the submitted site plan should be reviewed by the zoning advisory committee. I think we were wanting to be a little more specific there and not just say any modification. I mean, theoretically, if they were to change a plant material, we'd have to come back to ZAC, and I don't think that's really the intent here. I think the concern that was voiced was over the ingress and egress of the site. And so what we would like to do, with your permission, is to amend Q condition number 2 to say ingress and egress modifications to the submitted site plan.
Okay, what page are you on?
This is on the last page of the agenda, or page
17.
17.
Oh, the last sentence, okay.
Yeah, where it says any modification. Rather than say any modification, we want to focus on the specific issue that was addressed, or that was mentioned, and I believe that was the ingress and egress.
Okay, so you're going to change it to modifications, ingress and egress must be submitted, something, okay.
Right, yeah, I was just going to say, instead of saying any, just say ingress, egress modifications too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, ingress, egress modifications to the submitted site development plan should be reviewed by the zoning advisory committee. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, with that change, Councilor Woods, do you have a motion?
I'll just move and then also, do you think we need to include, along with ingress, egress, anything that impacts parking?
Ingress, egress modifications.
Because they got this curb cut that can idle vehicles for a while. So, I mean, that changes the equation if that's not there. But.
Okay.
Or are you satisfied with ingress, egress?
Okay, so.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so if item 2 said ingress, egress modifications to the submitted site development plan should be reviewed by the zoning advisory committee as well as any changes to the parking proposal. How about that?
Any changes to impact the parking?
Wait a minute, where's the impact go? Any
after
changes that impact the parking proposal?
Mm-hmm. Or Valley. We're working our way back up to any now.
I'll send you this sentence so that you can put it in the packet for the next people you show it to. Okay, so we have a motion to send it to the full council with no recommendation. I'll second that. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that will go to the full council with no recommendation, not a negative recommendation, not a positive recommendation, but no recommendation. And hopefully the resident parking proposal will be completed sometime soon, like in my lifetime, and we will be able to have something to protect the people who live in the neighborhood every single day of the week and would like to, park somewhere near their homes. Those are the people I'm concerned about. So thank you very much. We have one other item on our agenda, and that is the appointment to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And I've got so much paper here, I may not be able to.
Yeah, I saw a few different things on this. Which name is
I'm looking. No?
Got one like a couple days ago, and I got
Yeah,
some more stuff today.
it came via email. And it was the only person,
Was it? It was the Herbert Bevel.
yeah.
Okay.
Ah,
I move we nominate Herb Bevel Jr. to the ZBA board.
okay, I second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So now we have someone from the building industry finally on the zoning board of adjustment.
Just show up. Show up.
Yes, just come. So, there being nothing else on our agenda, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
I move adjournment.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.